Yes, I understand that every life must end.
About 5 years ago, I was sitting on the stairs in my parents' home, the home I grew up in, late at night, holding my mother tightly. We watched in horror as the paramedics performed CPR on my father on our living room floor, crushing his body with each violent thrust to the chest. A few months prior, he fell ill with pneumonia. It hit him like a ton of bricks. But he was a fighter, and he battled his way back from the brink of death. He got to the point where he got to get back into the office and do what he loved most, running our family business. Earlier that day, we had our weekly lunch at the club to talk about business. It was his favorite thing to do. We lingered a bit longer over an extra cup of coffee. I drove him home afterwards, and we had a big laugh when a funny song came on the radio. Later that night, as he was climbing the stairs, he collapsed into my mother's arms with a massive heart attack. Dad always said he was going to die with his boots on, and indeed he did. I knew my life would change forever in that instant. I was now the fourth generation president and CEO of a family real estate business started by my great-grandfather back in 1914. Up until that point, I was perfectly happy doing what I was doing, raising money and making deals. Now I would have to manage personnel and budgets and bottom lines. Just over a year later, as we're promoting our company's 100-year anniversary, our COO, a guy I'll call Scam for purposes of this story, called an abrupt meeting with me and two of our division heads, who I'll call Grubworm and Trash. They said they wanted to buy me out of the company by taking over our lease and picking up our accounts payable. So basically nothing. Scam says to me, "Greg, you should take this deal and ride off into the sunset. Take it or leave it. And if you leave it, we're leaving and taking everybody with us. You're going to be mighty lonely sitting up here all by yourself in this office." I was stunned, devastated. I was facing a mass exodus, betrayed by my father's so-called best friend, his right-hand man. We spent countless dinners, countless happy hours, countless trips together. He even spoke at my dad's funeral. I kept my composure. I told him I'd think about it and get back to him in a week. It couldn't have happened at a worse time. We literally were filming video interviews in my office all that week of key family and personnel in connection with our big anniversary party, which is fast approaching in a couple of months. When they shot my video, it looked like my head's about to explode. I hadn't slept or eaten in days. I was at the lowest point in my life. Our proud family legacy was crumbling around me on my watch. There wasn't going to be much to celebrate at our upcoming party. I did a lot of soul searching and turned to the power of prayer. Around the same time, my IT guy comes to me and says, "Scam, Grubworm, and Trash want me to back up their data," which is odd and very suspicious. "Do you want to see their emails?" And I said, "Hey, that's creepy. Can I do that?" He says, "Duh, yeah, you own the emails. They're your company." So I actually slept on it, thinking I could take this head on as opposed to resorting to surveillance. But the next morning I saw the light and quickly said, "Let me have them." So I spent the next week investigating the matter. And I guess these old-timers didn't realize that I could read their emails either. They didn't bother to hide their tracks at all. Everything was in writing. So I convened a Tiger team of close friends and colleagues from my Vistage group, which is a private forum of business leaders, and we met secretly and strategized on the best way to proceed. And they advised me to never let a good crisis go to waste. It turned out Scam had conspired with an existing client to form a competing business. Scam was the mastermind, self-dealing in bad faith behind my back, and Grubworm and Trash were the co-conspirators. The client was a senior housing developer, and he was going to pay them several $1 million for the company, but really only wanted a small part of the property management team. The client thought the deal was legit, and the property management team was kept in the dark, and they were all good people who were innocent victims in this whole thing. For the life of me, I don't understand what they were thinking. They had a sweet gig in our shop, and these guys were nearing retirement age. I guess they'd figured they'd get one last pop at my expense. That little old Greggy wouldn't put up a fight. Also, I think what led to this was that I was pressing for some reforms when I took over. I wanted to change their compensation structure to be more performance-based, which they met with fierce resistance. So my plan was to cut off the head of the snake. I knew the client didn't need scam, grub 'em, or trash. And fortunately, I had an ironclad employment agreement with a property management group, which included a non-compete clause. So I could totally destroy their deal. I had them right where I wanted them. The next week, I called a meeting with scam, grub 'em, and trash. And none of them knew that I knew anything. I played dumb all week and pretended I was going to make a deal. I made them an offer I knew they could never accept. Scam scoffed at me. I asked them if their deal with the client was finalized. Scam lied to my face, said nothing's in writing, but I had seen all the signed paperwork. That's when I disclosed that I knew everything about their deal. Their faces dropped. I fired them on the spot and told them to be out by the end of the day. Before the meeting, I had our IT guy shut off all their access to the company's phones, emails, and computer network. And so afterwards, they were huddled together in a panic in Scam's office on their cell phones trying to recruit people to leave with them. I hovered around them and told them, start cleaning out their desks. But the battle was far from over. There were several people still loyal to them in our midst. I was still very much at risk of losing the company and facing financial ruin. The office was in turmoil. People were anxious. In the days ahead, I called a company-wide meeting to allay their fears and to assure everyone we were going to carry on. Several good people came to me and expressed their loyalty. My wife, my sister, my mom, my kids, and several others. At church that week, the sermon was about how if you encourage somebody, you're channeling the Holy Spirit through you into the person that you're encouraging. And I had several people encouraging me that week. And so I had a spiritual awakening. I renewed my faith in God. I looked inward and I had to identify what I needed to do to be successful. I began to take my life much more seriously. So I ended up selling the property management team to the client on very, very favorable terms. I hated to see them go, but they were caught in the crossfire. They carried on with the client for a while, but they eventually parted ways. Scam, grub 'em, and trash, they were left twisting in the wind. While we lost a few people to them, it was good riddance. They formed a little company, but didn't last long. Pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. We ended the year with a huge centennial celebration that was very well attended. We had a panel discussion with myself and several of our famous alumni, like Roger Staubach, who's my personal hero. And we had spent a lot of time writing our history book that year and accordingly had to rewrite the last chapter. In hindsight, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. It turned out to be a total false alarm. I was able to implement many new reforms and promote younger, harder working people to leadership positions. When my father died, I inherited his company with his people and his policies in place. And through this crisis, I was able to put my stamp on the company and make it my own, for better or for worse. At the time, it was extremely painful. I thought my legacy was going to be one of failure, but instead, it was my greatest triumph. Reflecting back on these events, I think that up to that point, I kind of took the company for granted. I was so truly blessed with this opportunity. I employ a lot of people who depend on me to feed their families. It's a big responsibility. I'm happy to report that our company's doing great. We're having one of our best years ever. The changes I made in the aftermath are now bearing fruit, and we're grateful to have a pro-business president in the White House. So I looked closely at what made our company great. How had my forefathers have reacted? My great-grandfather, known as God's businessman with a servant's heart. My grandfather, the perfect gentleman, with his mild-mannered honesty and integrity. And my father, the fierce fighter pilot, with his never quit, don't complain, don't explain philosophy. And that's where I found my voice, at the intersection of those core values: faith in God, professional ethics, and mental toughness.